Cole Harrison gripped the handle of his maintenance cart, the cold metal biting into his calloused palms as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Everett Tower's basement. The air down here was thick, a stale cocktail of rust, oil, and the faint metallic hum of the building's lifeblood, its HVAC systems and electrical veins pulsing like a mechanical heart. At 37, Cole had become one with this underworld, his oil-stained uniform a second skin earned through 2 years of night shifts that paid a meager $14 an hour. It wasn't glamour, but it was survival. The graveyard hours allowed him to scoop Rosie from kindergarten at 3 p.m., share a hurried afternoon of peanut butter sandwiches and playground chases, tuck her in with a story by 6, and clock in just as the sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline. Imperfect? Absolutely. But since Meredith's car had skidded off that rain-slicked bridge 3 years ago, perfection was a luxury Cole couldn't afford. Doug, his supervisor, a burly 58-year-old with a salt and pepper beard, a limp from an old war wound, and eyes that had witnessed too many corporate purges, leaned against a rusted pipe rack, nursing a thermos of black coffee. "You're late tonight, Harrison," Doug grumbled, but there was no heat in it. He knew the drill, single dad scraping by on fumes. Doug had been there himself once, raising 2 boys after his wife walked out. "Babysitter flake again?" Cole nodded, wiping sweat from his brow with a grease-smudged sleeve. Mrs. Ramirez had a family thing, couldn't swing it. He didn't elaborate on the desperation, the frantic calls to neighbors, the church daycare that shut at 5 sharp, the unreliable teen down the block more interested in TikTok than tantrums. Options were ghosts in this city, vanishing when you needed them most. Doug sighed, screwing the lid back on his thermos. "Bring the kid, just keep her low-key. Suits are cracking down on unauthorized personnel after that audit last month." He clapped Cole on the shoulder, a paternal gesture honed from years of mentoring strays like him. "Storage room's clear. I'll rig the light if it flickers again." Gratitude swelled in Cole's chest, but he swallowed it down. Pride was his armor, stubborn and unyielding. "Thanks, Doug, owe you one." Or a dozen, he thought silently. The older man waved it off and shuffled toward the boiler room, his limp echoing in the dim fluorescence. Rosie trailed behind Cole, her small hand clutching Mr. Buttons, the once fluffy bear now a matted survivor of countless washes and hugs. At 5, she was a whirlwind of curls and curiosity, her wide brown eyes, Meredith's eyes, sparkling with that unquenchable light children wield like magic. She wore faded jeans, a hand-me-down sweater dotted with crayon stains, and those pink sneakers, scuffed at the toes and fraying at the Velcro straps. Meredith had picked them out 2 weeks before the accident, an impulse buy during a rare family outing. "Mommy's magic feet," Rosie called them, refusing replacements even as they pinched her growing toes. To her, they were a talisman, a thread to a mother she barely remembered. The storage room was their illicit haven, a cramped nook wedged between forgotten file cabinets and dusty office relics. Cole had dragged in a sagging couch months ago, its cushions smelling faintly of mothballs and old paper. He draped it with a clean sheet pilfered from the laundry supplies and added a battery-powered lamp for good measure. Rosie dubbed it her fortress kingdom, where dragons lurked in the vents and nights, namely, Daddy battled leaky pipes. "Tonight's adventure, the humming castle," Rosie declared, plopping onto the couch with theatrical flair. She unpacked her backpack, a riot of crayons, scrap paper, and a half-eaten granola bar. Cole knelt to her level, ruffling her curls. "Stay put, okay, bug. Daddy's gotta fix the beast in the walls." He mimed a growling monster, eliciting giggles that cut through the basement's drone like sunlight. As he pushed his cart down the hall, the guilt settled in, heavy as the toolbox on his shoulder. A 5-year-old shouldn't spend nights in a concrete tomb, lulled by the whir of generators. But eviction notices loomed like storm clouds over their Queen's walk-up, and medical bills from Meredith's final days still clawed at his paycheck. Alternatives, a pipe dream in this unforgiving city. The questions had begun about a year after the crash. Rosie, then 4, had tugged his sleeve one evening. "Daddy, what's a mommy do?" Cole's heart had stuttered. How to paint a portrait of Meredith, the woman with the infectious laugh, the one who'd braided hair with fairy tales woven in, who double-checked shoelaces because once isn't enough. Photos didn't help. Rosie saw strangers in those frozen smiles. So he described feelings. "A mommy kneels when you tumble, ties your laces twice for safety, looks at you like you're her whole world, smiles even on rainy days." Rosie nodded solemnly, then began her quest, labeling teachers, neighbors, anyone who fit the bill. Corrections followed, but the search persisted, a quiet ache in her innocent heart. Upstairs, in the gleaming heights of the 50th floor, Sloane Everett paced her corner office, the city lights sprawling below like a conquered kingdom. At 41, she commanded a $2.5 billion tech conglomerate, her decisions rippling through markets like shockwaves. But 3 years ago, leukemia had stolen over at 5, leaving Sloane with an empire of glass and a soul armored in ice. Late nights were her refuge, contracts over quiet, memories buried under spreadsheets. Home was a penthouse void, echoing with phantom giggles and the scent of antiseptic that clung like regret. That Tuesday, she descended at 11 p.m., heels clicking sharply on the parking garage concrete. And there she was, the girl, cross-legged amid crayons, humming off-key, pink sneakers aglow under the harsh lights. Sloane's breath hitched. Those shoes bubblegum pink, scuffed just like Ava's favorites, the ones she'd begged for on their last mall trip. For an eternal 3 seconds, Sloane froze, a fissure cracking her composure. The child didn't look up, absorbed in her masterpiece. Sloane turned, fleeing to her sleek black sedan, hands trembling on the wheel. Coincidence, she told herself. Nothing more, but the image lingered, a ghost in her rearview mirror. The next night she returned, and the next. Sometimes the spot was empty, a hollow disappointment Sloane refused to name. Other times she'd linger in shadows, watching the small figure with her bear and drawings. No words. Just observation, like studying a flame too dangerous to touch. On the fourth night, "Hello, shadow lady." The girl waved a crayon, eyes bright and fearless. Sloane nodded stiffly, pulse quickening, and hurried away. A wall in her heart developed a hairline fracture. Night 5, sobs echoed. A power glitch plunged the garage into 10 seconds of void. The girl huddled, shaking. Sloane stood 20 feet back, hand on the wall. "Are you scared of the dark too?" the child whimpered. "Yes," Sloane replied, voice a whisper. Her first concession. Not of literal shadows, but the inner abyss that had consumed her for 3 years, the grief that surged when stillness crept in. Night 6 sealed it, the girl's shoelaces frayed, snapping under frustrated tugs. She tripped, knees scraping concrete, a sharp cry piercing the air. Before logic intervened, Sloane moved, heels echoing, knees protesting as she knelt in her tailored suit. Her hands, accustomed to billion-dollar deals, gently grasped the pink sneaker. She tied the laces deliberately, tugging once, then twice. "Once isn't enough," she murmured, an echo of Ava's playful demand. The girl looked up, wonder in her eyes. "You're a mommy." The word struck like lightning. Sloane stood abruptly, heart hammering, and fled, heels like gunfire, the child's call fading behind her. Back in her office, Sloane stared at the city, fingers pressed to the glass. Something stirred, dangerous and alive. Vulnerability. She pushed it down, but the crack remained. What shadows lurk in your own depths when grief whispers? Relate to Cole's silent battle. Many mask their struggles in the grind. Should he swallow his pride and seek more help, or is this fortress of self-reliance his only shield? But in the tower's shadowed veins, a single word would echo upward, shattering the ice around a heart long frozen, and pulling two broken worlds into collision. Sloane Everett stood motionless at the floor-to-ceiling window of her 50th floor office, palms flat against the cool glass, watching the city bleed neon into the night. Manhattan sprawled beneath her like a living circuit board, taxis carving red and white rivers through the streets, distant sirens stitching the darkness. At 41, she had orchestrated this view. Acquisitions that reshaped industries, boardroom battles won with surgical precision, a $2.5 billion empire forged from code and relentless will. Yet the reflection staring back at her was hollow, sharp cheekbones, ash-blonde hair pinned in an unyielding chignon, gray eyes the color of winter steel. 3 years since Ava's leukemia had stolen the light from those eyes. 3 years of nights like this one, where silence pressed harder than any deadline. Elena Ramirez, her executive assistant for 7 years, lingered in the doorway holding a tablet and a fresh espresso. At 34, Elena was all quick wit and dark curls, the only person in the building who dared speak to Sloane without a filter. "The Q4 projections are uploaded," she said, voice careful. "And the board's asking again about succession planning. They're not subtle." Sloane didn't turn. "Tell them succession is handled when I say it is." Elena set the tablet on the edge of the desk. They also flagged the security logs. "Repeated unauthorized access in the sublevels after hours. Maintenance swears it's nothing, just routine checks, but it's the third time this month." Sloane's jaw tightened. "Routine or not, I want eyes on it. Tonight." Elena hesitated. "You're running on 3 hours of sleep. Again, when's the last time you ate something that didn't come from a vending machine?" Sloane finally faced her. "I ate breakfast. Yesterday." Elena's expression softened into something dangerously close to pity. "Jeffa, you're scaring me. You used to at least pretend you were human." The word landed like a slap. Sloane's gaze flicked to the small glass case on the credenza behind her desk. Inside, preserved under soft LED light, sat a single pink sneaker, tiny, scuffed at the toe, laces still double-knotted the way Ava had demanded every morning. "Once isn't enough, Mommy." Sloane had laughed then, tugging the laces again just to hear the giggle. Now the shoe sat like a relic, a silent accusation. "I'm fine," Sloane said, the lie automatic. Elena didn't buy it. "You haven't been fine since Ava. You've been absent, even when you're in the room." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. That little girl in the garage last week, the one with the crayons. You've gone down there every night since. Security cameras caught you standing in the shadows like a ghost. What's going on? Sloane's fingers curled against the glass. Nothing. Bullshit. Elena crossed her arms. You smiled at her drawing. I saw the footage. First real smile in 3 years, and then you ran like she'd set you on fire. Sloane turned away, pulse hammering. Drop it, Elena. I won't, because if you keep burying yourself in this tower, one day you're going to look up and realize the Empire is all that's left, and it won't care when you break. Elena's voice cracked on the last word. Ava wouldn't want this. The name hit harder than any boardroom ambush. Sloane closed her eyes, the memory surging unbidden. Ava's hospital room smelling of antiseptic and vanilla pudding, small hand gripping hers, whispering, "Tell me the elevator story again, Mommy." The one where the princess lives at the top of the tallest tower. Sloane had told it every night until the end. Now elevators felt like tombs. Get the night sweep scheduled, Sloane said quietly. And pull the maintenance logs for the last month. Every name, every shift. Elena studied her for a long moment, then nodded. On it, but promise me one thing. Sloane raised an eyebrow. Eat something tonight, anything. Even if it's just the protein bar in your drawer. Sloane gave the ghost of a nod. Elena left, door clicking softly behind her. Alone again, Sloane opened the glass case, something she hadn't done in over a year. She lifted the pink sneaker, thumb brushing the frayed Velcro. The leather was still warm from the light, or maybe that was memory playing tricks. She pressed it to her chest, closed her eyes, and let the grief rise like tidewater. It didn't drown her anymore. It simply filled every empty space until breathing hurt. Down in the basement, Cole rounded the corner to the storage room just as the overhead lights flickered, a brief stutter, then steady again. Rosie sat cross-legged on the couch, tongue poking out in concentration as she colored. Mr. Buttons propped beside her like a silent sentinel. "Daddy, look," she held up the paper proudly. 3 stick figures stood inside a tall rectangle with buttons along one side. One had brown hair labeled Daddy, one had curly hair and a dress labeled Me, and the third had yellow hair and a big red smile. Underneath, in careful kindergarten printing, Mommy in the elevator. Cole's stomach dropped. He knelt beside her, studying the drawing. "Who's this one, Bug?" "The Shadow Lady," Rosie said matter-of-factly. "She tied my shoe, twice. Like a real mommy does." Her eyes shone with certainty. "She smiled at me just a little, but I saw." Cole swallowed the lump in his throat. He'd glimpsed the woman from a distance that night, tailored suit, heels like weapons, face pale as she knelt in the garage. He hadn't recognized her then. Now the whispers from other maintenance guys made sense. The Ice Queen herself, Sloane Everett, descending to the lower levels after dark. He brushed a curl from Rosie's forehead. "She's nice, huh?" Rosie nodded vigorously. "She's not scared of the dark like the other grown-ups. She stayed until the lights came back." Cole's chest tightened. He'd been 20 feet away, flashlight beam cutting the gloom, watching a stranger comfort his daughter when he couldn't. Pride warred with gratitude. He wanted to shield Rosie from disappointment, from hoping for something that might vanish. But the light in her eyes when she talked about the Shadow Lady was the brightest thing he'd seen in years. "Time to pack up soon," he said gently. "We've got another hour before I can clock out." Rosie yawned, hugging Mr. Buttons. "Can we come back tomorrow? Maybe she'll be here again." Cole hesitated. Maybe. He tucked the drawing into his pocket, careful not to crease it. Upstairs, the tower's polished marble and chrome mocked the grit below. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, something felt different. A thread had been pulled, small, fragile, dangerous. Sloane, still holding Ava's shoe, walked to the service elevator and pressed the button for the sub-basement. She told herself it was to oversee the sweep personally. Efficiency, control. But deep down she knew the truth. She was chasing a crack in the ice, terrified it might close before she could see what lay beneath. The doors slid open on dim concrete and the faint scent of crayons. Have you ever chased a ghost of warmth you thought was gone forever, only to find it waiting in the shadows of your own building? Relate to Sloane's quiet descent, the pull she can't name. Should she turn back before the fracture widens, or step forward into the unknown? The next time the lights flickered, a small hand would reach through the dark, and one word, spoken in innocent certainty, would echo up 50 floors and change everything. The service elevator descended in near silence, only the soft mechanical sigh marking its passage through the tower's steel spine. Sloane Everett stood with her back to the mirrored wall, arms crossed tightly over her chest as if holding herself together. The pink sneaker from Ava's glass case was tucked inside her blazer pocket, unseen, but heavy against her ribs like a second heartbeat. She had told Elena the sweep was routine compliance. She had told herself the same thing. Neither believed it. The doors parted on sublevel B3. Cool, damp air rushed in, carrying the familiar sense of concrete, ozone, and something sweeter, crayon wax and strawberry shampoo. Sloane stepped out, heels muted on the worn floor. Emergency lights cast long red shadows down the corridor. She moved deliberately, telling herself she was checking access points, inspecting panels. But her eyes searched the dimness for one small figure. 20 yards ahead, the storage room door stood slightly ajar. A faint yellow glow spilled into the hall from the battery lamp Cole had rigged. Sloane slowed. She heard it before she saw her, a small, hiccuping sob, barely louder than the distant hum of the generators. Rosie sat on the concrete just outside the storage room threshold, knees drawn to her chest, face buried in Mr. Button's matted fur. The power flicker earlier, 10 seconds of total black, had been enough to send her scrambling out of the fortress. The darkness had felt endless. Now she rocked slightly, whispering to the bear, it's okay, Daddy's coming soon." Sloane froze. Every instinct screamed retreat, back to the elevator, back to the penthouse, back to the armor, but her feet refused. The sound of that cry pierced something she had spent 3 years trying to cauterize. She took one step, then another. Rosie lifted her head at the third, tear-streaked cheeks, wide brown eyes swimming. Recognition dawned slowly, then burst like sunrise. "Shadow Lady." The sob turned into a gasp of relief. Rosie scrambled to her feet, pink sneakers squeaking, and ran straight at Sloane. Sloane dropped to one knee without thinking, silk trousers scraping concrete, blazer falling open. Small arms wrapped around her neck, face pressing into the crook of her shoulder. Rosie smelled like crayons and faint strawberry and the clean sweat of a frightened child. Sloane's arms hovered, uncertain, then settled, tentative at first, then firmer. One hand cupped the back of Rosie's head, the other rested between her shoulder blades. She felt the rapid flutter of the girl's heart against her own. "It was so dark," Rosie whispered into Sloane's collar, "like the lights were gone forever." Sloane closed her eyes. "I know," she said softly. "I hate the dark too." Rosie pulled back just enough to look up, studying Sloane's face with grave intensity. "You stayed," she said, as if this were the most important fact in the world. "You didn't run away like the other grown-ups." Sloane's throat tightened. "I'm here now." Rosie nodded, satisfied, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "I made this before the lights went out. For you." Sloane accepted the drawing with careful fingers. 3 stick figures inside an elevator rectangle. Daddy with brown hair, Rosie with curls, and the third, yellow hair, red smile, standing beside them instead of trapped behind buttons. Beneath, in wobbly but determined letters, Mommy. The word landed like a physical blow. Sloane stared at it, breath shallow. Rosie watched her face, unafraid. "You smiled at me," she explained simply, "and you tied my shoe twice. That's what mommies do, so you're my mommy now." In the tower. Before Sloane could find words, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Cole rounded the corner, flashlight beam sweeping, toolbox clanking against his thigh. He saw them, his daughter wrapped around the CEO of Everett Industries, Sloane kneeling in her $1,000 suit on basement concrete, a crayon drawing trembling between her fingers. He stopped dead. "Rosie, Daddy." Rosie disentangled herself and ran to him, hugging his leg. "She found me." The shadow lady stayed when it was dark. Cole's gaze locked with Sloane's over Rosie's head. Gray storm met brown earth. He saw the tears she hadn't yet let fall, the way her shoulders trembled just enough to notice. She saw the exhaustion etched into his face, the flicker of protectiveness warring with something softer, recognition, maybe even gratitude. "I'm sorry," Cole said quietly, voice rough. "She shouldn't be down here. It's against every rule." Sloane rose slowly, knees protesting, blazer creased, dignity in tatters. She looked at the drawing again, then at Rosie beaming up at both of them. "It's fine," she said. Her voice cracked on the edges, soft, unguarded. "She was scared. I stayed." Cole exhaled, shoulders dropping a fraction. He knelt beside Rosie, brushing a tear track from her cheek. "You okay now, bug?" Rosie nodded vigorously. She hugged me, like a real mommy hug. The word hung between the adults again, heavier this time. Sloane folded the drawing with exaggerated care and slipped it into her blazer pocket, beside Ava's pink sneaker. The 2 talismans rested together, one preserved in grief, the other offered in innocent faith. Cole stood. "I'll take her home early tonight, won't happen again." Sloane met his eyes. "She drew me smiling," she said, almost to herself. "I haven't smiled in 3 years, not once." Cole's expression softened. "Kids see what we hide. Sometimes better than we do." Silence stretched, only the hum of the building and Rosie's soft humming as she hugged Mr. Buttons. Sloane took a breath. "I should go. Board call in 40 minutes. But she didn't move. Rosie tugged Sloane's sleeve. "Will you come back tomorrow, if the dark comes again?" Sloane looked down at the small, hopeful face. Something inside her, long frozen, shifted, a tectonic plate grinding into new position. "I'll try," she whispered. Cole watched the exchange, chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. Gratitude, fear, a dangerous flicker of hope. Sloane turned toward the elevator. Halfway there, she paused, looked back. "Mr. Harrison." "Cole," he corrected gently. "Cole," she tested the name, found it fit. Thank you for not assuming the worst. He gave a small nod. Thank you for staying. The elevator doors closed on her silhouette, blazer rumpled, hair coming loose from its chignon, a crayon drawing and a child's pink sneaker pressed against her heart. Back in the storage room, Cole tucked Rosie onto the couch. She yawned, already drifting. She's nice, Daddy, like the giants in my stories, the ones who come down when you need them. Cole kissed her forehead. Yeah, bug. She is? He stared at the closed door long after Sloane had gone, the weight on his shoulders feeling, impossibly, shared for the first time in 3 years. Upstairs, Sloane reached her office just as the board call connected. She sat back straight, voice crisp, as she fielded questions about projections and timelines. But her free hand rested in her pocket, fingers brushing crayon paper and worn leather. And for the first time in 3 years, when the screen reflected her face, she didn't look away. Have you ever heard a single word crack open a vault you thought was sealed forever? Relate to that moment when innocence names something you were too afraid to claim. Should Sloane have walked away faster, or was letting the word land the first real step toward thawing? The next flicker of lights would not be an accident, and when Rosie reached for the one person she now trusted most in the dark, the tower itself would feel the tremor of what came next. The next evening arrived with a low-pressure system pressing against the city, turning the sky the color of bruised steel. Rain lashed the tower's glass facade in sheets, blurring the line between Manhattan's lights and the reflection of Sloane's office. She had canceled 2 meetings that afternoon, unheard of, and told Alina she needed the floor clear after 9 p.m. Alina had only raised one eyebrow and said, "I'll make sure the cleaning crew skips B3 tonight." Sloane descended alone this time. No security sweep pretense, no tablet, just the small, folded drawing in one pocket and Ava's pink sneaker in the other. The elevator opened onto the same dim corridor, but the air felt different, thicker, expectant. She walked slowly, heels deliberately soft against the concrete. The storage room door was ajar again. Yellow lamplight spilled out, and inside she heard Rosie's voice, soft, sing-song, narrating to Mr. Buttons. And then the princess in the high tower heard a tiny voice calling up from the basement, so she climbed down all the stairs, past the dragons and the noisy machines, because even princesses get lonely sometimes. Sloane paused at the threshold. Rosie sat cross-legged on the couch, bare in lap, drawing with fierce concentration. Cole was not in sight, probably tracing a circuit 2 corridors over. The girl didn't notice her at first. Then Rosie looked up, her face lit like a struck match. "Shadow Lady," she scrambled off the couch, paper fluttering to the floor, and ran straight into Sloane's legs. This time Sloane didn't hesitate. She knelt immediately, arms opening, catching the small body against her chest. Rosie's curls tickled her chin, her heartbeat thumped fast and trusting. "You came back," Rosie whispered, as if it were a miracle she hadn't quite believed in. "I said I'd try," Sloane murmured into her hair. Rosie pulled back just enough to study Sloane's face. "You look different tonight, not so pointy." Sloane almost laughed, rusty, surprised. "Pointy? Like when grown-ups are pretending they're not scared." Rosie touched Sloane's cheek with one small finger, tracing the line where tension usually lived. "Now you're softer, like when Daddy reads me stories." Sloane swallowed. "I brought something for you." She reached into her pocket and withdrew the folded drawing, the one from last night. Rosie's eyes widened as Sloane smoothed it open between them. "You kept it," Rosie breathed. "I kept it," Sloane confirmed. "It's very special," Rosie beamed, then darted to the couch and returned with a new sheet. "I made another one today while I waited." This drawing was simpler, 2 figures holding hands, one tall with yellow hair, one small with curls. No elevator this time, just open space, a yellow sun overhead. Underneath, Shadow Lady plus me. Sloane traced the crayon lines with a trembling finger. "You didn't draw Daddy this time." Rosie shrugged, suddenly shy. "Daddy's always here, but you come when it's dark, like magic." The words landed softly, but they struck deep. Sloane felt something inside her chest loosen, a knot tied 3 years ago finally beginning to unravel. Footsteps approached. Cole appeared in the doorway, toolbox in hand, flashlight clipped to his belt. He stopped when he saw them, Sloane on her knees in a $3,000 suit, Rosie tucked against her side, 2 drawings spread on the concrete between them. His expression flickered, surprise, wariness, then something gentler. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. Rosie answered before Sloane could. "She came back, Daddy, and she kept my picture." Cole set the toolbox down slowly. "I see that." Sloane rose carefully, keeping one hand on Rosie's shoulder. "I didn't mean to overstep. You stayed when she was scared," Cole interrupted gently. "That's not overstepping. That's more than most would do." Silence settled, broken only by the rain drumming against distant windows high above. Cole glanced at the drawings, then at Sloane. "She talks about you constantly now." "The shadow lady who isn't afraid of the dark." Sloane's throat worked. "I was afraid. I still am." Cole met her eyes. "So am I every damn day, but she doesn't need us to be fearless." She just needs us to show up. The word us hung between them, small, accidental, enormous. Rosie tugged Sloane's sleeve. Can you stay a little, just till the rain stops? Daddy says rain makes monsters come out in the pipes. Sloane looked at Cole, a question permission. He gave a small nod. I've got a panel to check 2 halls over, won't be long. If you're okay staying, I'm okay, Sloane said and meant it. Cole hesitated at the door, then added quietly, thank you, again. He left them alone in the lamplight. Rosie pulled Sloane down onto the couch. Tell me a story, she demanded, nestling against Sloane's side like it was the most natural place in the world. The one about the princess in the tall tower, but make her come down sometimes. Not just stay up high, Sloane's breath caught. It was Ava's favorite story, the one she'd told every night in the hospital until the words ran dry. She hadn't spoken it aloud since, but Rosie waited, eyes wide and patient. So Sloane began, voice low and unsteady at first. Once there was a princess who lived at the very top of the tallest tower in the kingdom. She had everything, glass walls, golden light, a view of the whole world, but she was lonely. The higher she climbed, the farther away everyone else seemed. Rosie listened, head on Sloane's shoulder, small fingers tracing patterns on Sloane's sleeve. Halfway through, Sloane felt the child's breathing slow deepen. Rosie's eyes fluttered, closed. Sloane kept telling the story, quieter now, until the princess finally stepped into the elevator and rode it all the way down. When she finished, Rosie was asleep, cheek pressed to Sloane's blazer, Mr. Buttons clutched between them. Sloane didn't move. She sat there in the basement fortress, rain drumming far above, a sleeping 5-year-old trusting her completely, and felt the ice inside her crack wider, not painfully, but with a strange, aching relief. Cole returned 20 minutes later, quieter than before. He stopped in the doorway, watching them. Sloane met his gaze over Rosie's head. She fell asleep, Sloane whispered. Cole crossed the room slowly, knelt, and eased Rosie into his arms without waking her. As he lifted her, Sloane stood too, smoothing her blazer, suddenly self-conscious. Cole paused before leaving. You told her a story. Sloane nodded. She asked for one Ava used to love. He searched her face. You okay? Sloane exhaled shakily. No, but better than I was yesterday. Cole gave a small, tired smile, the first she'd seen from him. That's enough for one night. He shifted Rosie higher against his shoulder. Saturday, she has a soccer game at the field on 8th. 10 a.m. If you want to see her play, you're welcome. Sloane's heart stuttered. You're sure? I'm sure she'd love it, Cole said simply. And I think maybe I would too. He walked toward the exit, Rosie's head nestled under his chin. At the door, he looked back once. Drive safe, Sloane. It was the first time he'd used her name. She stood alone in the storage room until the echo of his footsteps faded. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out both talismans, the crayon drawing and Ava's shoe, and held them together in her palm. 2 small, precious things, one from loss, one from possibility. She closed her fingers around them and walked to the elevator. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't dread the ride up. Have you ever sat in silence with someone else's sleeping child and realized the heart you thought was broken still knew how to beat for someone new? Relate to Sloane holding both past and future in one hand. Should she go to that soccer field Saturday, or is showing up again the most terrifying and necessary thing she's done in years? Saturday morning would bring sun on wet grass, a small girl in shin guards, and a choice Sloane could no longer avoid. One step onto that field would mean stepping fully into a life she never thought she'd have again. Saturday morning broke clear and sharp after 3 days of rain. The field behind the elementary school on 8th Street smelled of damp earth and cut grass, the kind of scent that promised new beginnings even if the ground still squelched underfoot. Parents lined the sidelines with travel mugs and folding chairs, cheering half-heartedly as a swarm of 5 and 6-year-olds in mismatched shin guards chased a ball in every direction except toward the goal. Cole stood near the bleachers in jeans and a faded gray hoodie, arms crossed, watching Rosie sprint in enthusiastic circles. She wore purple cleats, new ones they'd bought together the day before, after she finally agreed the pink sneakers were too magic to get muddy. Her ponytail bounced wildly. Every few minutes she glanced toward the parking lot, eyes searching. She'll come, Cole told her when she asked for the 4th time. He wasn't entirely sure he believed it himself. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company showing up to a kindergarten soccer game felt like something from one of Rosie's stories, not real life. At 10:12, a black SUV eased into the far end of the lot, discreet, no driver in uniform, no obvious security. Sloane stepped out alone, jeans, cream sweater, flat boots, hair loose around her shoulders in soft waves. No power suit, no chignon, no armor. She looked smaller without the tower behind her, almost ordinary. Almost vulnerable. She spotted them immediately. Rosie saw her first. She's here. The girl bolted across the field, ignoring her coach's shout, dodging between players like they were cones. She hit Sloane at full speed, arms wrapping around her waist, face pressed against the soft wool of her sweater. You came. Rosie's voice was muffled but triumphant. Sloane knelt without hesitation, hugging her back, firmer this time, less tentative. I said I'd try, she murmured, echoing their basement promise. Her hand smoothed down Rosie's ponytail, a gesture so automatic it startled her. Cole walked over slowly, hands in his pockets to keep them from fidgeting. Up close he could see the faint shadows under Sloane's eyes, the way her fingers trembled just slightly as they rested on Rosie's back. Morning, he said quietly. Morning. Sloane looked up, met his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, nerves, the shared knowledge that this was a line being crossed. Rosie tugged Sloane toward the sideline. Come sit with Daddy. He brought the good juice boxes. Apple, not the yucky grape kind. Sloane let herself be pulled. They settled on the grass beside Cole, close enough that their shoulders brushed when they shifted. Sloane tucked her legs to the side, suddenly aware of how out of place she felt and how little she cared. The game was gloriously chaotic. No one kept score. Half the kids forgot which goal was theirs. Rosie spent more time waving at the sideline than chasing the ball. Every time she glanced over, Sloane raised a hand in a small wave, and Rosie beamed brighter. At one point, a rogue ball rolled toward them. Sloane caught it instinctively, stood, and kicked it gently back, perfect arc, soft landing. A few parents clapped. Cole raised an eyebrow. Club team in high school, Sloane said, almost sheepishly. Forward. Cole smiled, small, real. Figures. Halfway through, Rosie scored accidentally. She'd been trying to kick a dandelion puff that drifted onto the field. Her foot connected with the ball instead. It sailed in slow motion past the bewildered goalie. The other kids cheered like she'd won the World Cup. Rosie sprinted straight to them, arms wide. Sloane was on her feet before she realized it. Rosie launched into her arms. Sloane caught her, spun once, laughing, actually laughing, the sound rusty but bright. Cole stood too, clapping until his palms stung. You saw, Rosie demanded, cheeks flushed. I saw everything, Sloane said, voice thick. She set Rosie down but kept both hands on her shoulders. You're amazing. Rosie grinned, then darted back to the field. Cole and Sloane sat again. Silence stretched, comfortable now, not heavy. She hasn't laughed like that in a long time, Cole said quietly. Sloane nodded. Neither have I. A gust of wind lifted Rosie's discarded hoodie. Sloane caught it before it blew away. Their fingers brushed, brief, electric. Neither pulled back immediately. Cole cleared his throat. I read about the leak, the photos from the lobby. Board's meeting Monday, Sloane exhaled. They want explanations. I'm not sure what to tell them yet. Tell them the truth, Cole said simply. A little girl reminded you how to feel again. Sloane looked at him, really looked. Tired eyes, strong jaw, quiet endurance. And what about you? What does this remind you of? Cole watched Rosie chase the ball. That maybe I don't have to carry it all alone anymore. The game ended in a tie no one cared about. Parents gathered gear. Kids ran in delirious circles. Rosie returned, sweaty and triumphant, and climbed into Sloane's lap without asking. Sloane wrapped her arms around her automatically. Story time? Rosie asked hopefully. Sloane glanced at Cole. He nodded. Once, Sloane began softly, there was a princess who lived way up in a tower made of glass. She was very strong but very lonely. Then one day, a tiny adventurer came looking for a friend. Rosie listened, head on Sloane's shoulder, small hand clutching Sloane's sleeve. When the story ended, with the princess riding the elevator down to play on green grass, Rosie hugged her neck. You're not lonely anymore, she whispered. Sloane's eyes stung. She pressed her lips to Rosie's curls. No, she agreed. I'm not. A photographer lingered near the parking lot fence, long lens, baseball cap. Sloane noticed him. Her shoulders tensed for a heartbeat, then relaxed. She didn't flinch when the shutter clicked. Cole followed her gaze. You okay? She exhaled slowly. It's starting, the story's getting out. Ice Queen thaws. They're calling it a PR stunt already. Cole's jaw tightened. Is it? Sloane met his eyes. No, it's just me. Being human, Rosie slid off her lap and ran to grab her water bottle. Sloane and Cole stood. Next Saturday, Sloane asked. Cole smiled, small, real. We'll be here. As Sloane walked back to her SUV, phone buzzing with Alina's texts. Photo just hit page 6. Call me? She looked back once. Cole lifted Rosie onto his shoulders. They both waved. Sloane waved back. In the car, she opened the small drawing Rosie had slipped into her pocket during the story. 3 figures on green grass under a yellow sun. Underneath, in careful letters, better. Sloane pressed it to her chest, eyes closing briefly. Better, not a replacement, not a copy, something new. She started the engine and drove into the city that no longer felt quite so cold. Have you ever watched someone rediscover joy and realized you helped light the match? That moment on the field wasn't fireworks. It was quiet certainty. Relate to Sloane letting her guard down in public, to Cole choosing hope over fear. Should she fight the media storm head-on, or protect this fragile new thing by staying quiet a little longer? If you were them, facing cameras and questions, what would you hold on to most? Monday's boardroom would demand answers Sloan wasn't ready to give, but the real storm arrived when Cole opened his door to a process server, and Sloan's name appeared on papers that could unravel everything they'd just begun to build. Monday evening arrived with thunder rolling low across Manhattan, the kind that vibrated through glass and steel like a warning. Rain hammered the tower's facade in relentless sheets, blurring the city lights into smeared halos. Inside the 50th floor boardroom, the air smelled of wet wool, expensive cologne, and tension thick enough to cut. Sloane stood at the head of the long ebony table, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The bracelet of red, blue, and yellow beads Rosie had given her clicking softly against her wrist every time she moved. The leaked photos played on the wall screen in silent rotation. Sloane kneeling in the lobby, arms around a small girl. Sloane pushing swings in Battery Park. Sloane laughing, actually laughing, on wet grass. Each image felt like a stolen breath. Harlan Voss, silver-haired and sharp as a blade, leaned forward first. This is a liability, Sloane. The narrative has shifted overnight. Ice Queen plays house with the maintenance man. We're in the middle of delicate negotiations. Distractions cost billions. The room stayed quiet. Elena sat to Sloane's right, tablet glowing, prepared talking points ignored. Sloane met Harlan's gaze without flinching. "Those photos are real," she said. Her voice was steady, calm in a way that made the room lean in. "The girl is 5. Her father works nights in this building so she can go to preschool. I met them by chance, and yes, I stayed, because she called me something I hadn't heard in 3 years." Silence stretched taut. "My daughter died," Sloane continued. "Leukemia, 3 years ago. I buried myself in this company to forget. Forgetting doesn't work, it just hollows you out." She touched the beads on her wrist. "That little girl reminded me I'm still capable of feeling something. If that costs us the merger, so be it. But I won't apologize for remembering how to be human." Harlan opened his mouth. Sloane raised a hand, not imperious, just final. "I'm not asking permission," she said. "I'm telling you this isn't a scandal. It's me choosing to live again. If the board can't support that, then perhaps it's time we reevaluate who belongs at this table." Elena cleared her throat. "Stock dipped 0.5 point this morning on the initial leak, then climbed 2 points when the human interest wires picked it up. People are rooting for her, for them." A few heads nodded. Harlan exhaled through his nose. "Fine, but keep it contained. No more park dates on page 6. Sloane met his eyes. "I make no promises." The storm outside worsened. Lightning cracked white across the sky. Power flickered once, twice, then held. Sloane's phone buzzed against the table. Cole. She stepped into the hallway to answer. "Rosie's scared," he said without preamble. "Lights keep going out." "She's asking for you." Sloane looked back at the boardroom door. "Meeting's over," she told the empty corridor. She took the service elevator down, rain drumming like applause against the building's skin. The basement corridor smelled of wet concrete and ozone. Cole waited near the storage room. Rosie curled against his side on the old couch, battery lantern flickering between them. Thunder boomed. Rosie whimpered. Sloane crossed the distance, knelt. "Hey, brave girl." Rosie reached for her immediately. Sloane gathered her close, settling onto the couch so Rosie could nestle between them. Cole sat on the other side, close enough that their knees brushed. The three of them formed a small island against the storm. Rosie's breathing slowed as Sloane stroked her back in slow circles. "The giants are singing again," Rosie mumbled sleepily. Sloane smiled against her hair. "They are. They're keeping the tower safe." Thunder rolled again, softer this time. Rosie drifted off, cheek pressed to Sloane's sweater, small hand clutching the bracelet. Cole spoke first, voice low. "You paid the rent, 3 months in advance." "Anonymous?" Sloane didn't deny it. "I didn't want you to fight it or feel like charity. I wanted you to feel seen." Cole exhaled. "I do, every day now." Lightning flashed, illuminating their faces for a heartbeat. 2 tired people, 1 sleeping child between them. Cole reached over Rosie's head and brushed a wet strand of hair from Sloane's cheek. His thumb lingered. Sloane didn't pull away. "I'm scared," she whispered, "of losing this, of the world taking it." Cole's hand found hers on the couch cushion. Their fingers laced together over Rosie's sleeping form. "Then we hold on tighter," he said. The light steadied. Rain softened to a steady patter. Rosie stirred, mumbled something about giants fixing the sky, then settled again. Cole squeezed Sloane's hand once, then let go, but the warmth remained. Elena texted, "Board's quiet. They're watching, but they're not fighting you anymore." Sloane looked at Cole. "I defended us today, in front of everyone." He nodded. "Doug showed me the clip someone recorded on their phone. You were fierce." Sloane gave a small, surprised laugh. "Fierce, I like that." They sat in the dim lamplight as the storm wound down. Rosie slept soundly between them, safe in the circle of 2 people who had spent years believing safety was a thing that happened to other people. Cole spoke quietly. "I read Meredith's old letters sometimes. The ones she wrote when we were dating. Reminds me she was real." Sloane nodded. I avoid Ava's favorite park. The swings still have her handprints on the chains pressed into the rust. I can't go. Cole met her eyes. Maybe one day we both go, not to forget, just to remember differently. Sloane's throat tightened. I'd like that. The rain eased to a drizzle. Cole stood carefully, lifting Rosie into his arms. I should get her home before the next wave hits. Sloane rose too. I'll walk you to the service exit. They moved through the corridor in silence, Cole carrying Rosie, Sloane beside him, their shoulders brushing now and then. At the door to the underground garage, Cole paused. Saturday, he said. Same field, if the weather holds. Sloane touched Rosie's sleeping cheek, then met Cole's gaze. I'll be there. He gave her a small, tired smile. Drive safe, Sloane. She watched them disappear into the rain, then turned back toward the elevator. In her office, she opened her desk drawer and placed Rosie's newest drawing beside Ava's shoe, 3 figures under a yellow sun, labeled better. She closed the drawer gently. For the first time in 3 years, going home didn't feel like walking into a mausoleum. Have you ever stood up for something fragile and new in front of people who could destroy it and felt stronger for it? That boardroom moment is pure courage. Relate to Sloane choosing heart over image, to Cole learning that accepting help isn't weakness. If you were either of them, trapped in that storm with a sleeping child between you, what would you say next? The storm passed, but the real tempest arrived the next morning when Cole opened his apartment door to find a process server and Sloane's name on the legal papers that could tear their fragile new world apart. Saturday morning arrived with pale winter sun cutting through the last of the clouds, turning the Hudson's surface into a sheet of hammered gold. Cole pushed Rosie's stroller along the Battery Park promenade, the river wind carrying salt and the faint diesel hum of distant ferries. Rosie clutched a paper bag of juice boxes and snacks, Cole's attempt at normalcy, her purple cleats kicking excitedly against the footrest. She wore her favorite blue coat, the one with the silver star buttons, and kept asking the same question every few steps. Will she come, Daddy? Really, really? Cole squeezed her hand where it rested on the stroller bar. She said she would, bug, she keeps her promises. At 10:07, a black SUV pulled into a discreet spot near the path. No driver emerged. Sloane stepped out alone. Dark jeans, cream sweater, hair loose and wind-tossed, flat boots instead of heels. She carried 2 coffees in a carrier, steam curling in the crisp air. The bracelet of beads clicked softly against her wrist as she walked toward them. Cole noticed it first, the way she looked smaller without the tower's shadow, almost ordinary, almost nervous. She handed him one of the coffees. Black, strong. I wasn't sure what you liked. He took it, warmth seeping into his palms. Perfect. Rosie wriggled out of the stroller and ran the last few steps, throwing herself at Sloane's legs. You came back, Sloane knelt immediately, hugging her close. I came back. Her voice was soft, surprised by its own steadiness. They walked to a bench overlooking the water. Rosie immediately tugged Sloane toward the playground swings. Push me like last time. Sloane hesitated only a second, then followed. She stood behind the swing, hands gentle on the chains. Rosie kicked her legs, climbing higher with each arc, laughter spilling out like bright notes. Sloane's face softened, lines easing around her eyes, a real smile breaking through. Cole watched from the bench, chest tight with something he couldn't name. Gratitude, fear, hope. A photographer lingered near the railing, long lens, baseball cap pulled low. Sloane noticed him first. Her shoulders tensed for a heartbeat, then relaxed. She didn't flinch when the shutter clicked. Cole followed her gaze. You okay? He asked quietly. She exhaled slowly. It's starting. The photo from the lobby went viral overnight. Everett's secret soft spot. They're calling it a PR stunt already. Cole's jaw tightened. Is it? Sloane met his eyes. No, it's just me being human. Rosie ran back, cheeks flushed, grabbing Sloane's hand. Higher next time, you push like a giant. Sloane laughed, soft, surprised. Maybe I'm learning to be a giant who comes down from the tower. They sat together on the grass. Rosie spread out her crayons and paper. She drew 3 figures, one tall with brown hair, one small in purple shoes, one with yellow hair holding a swing chain. Underneath, in careful letters, Park Day. Sloane traced the yellow-haired figure with her finger. That's me, Rosie nodded. You're smiling, you didn't used to. Cole spoke quietly. She sees what we hide. Sloane looked at him. I envied you at first. You still felt everything. I thought I'd locked it away forever. Cole shook his head. I feel it. I just don't let it stop me. Most days. A gust of wind lifted Rosie's drawing. Sloane caught it before it flew away. Their hands brushed, brief, electric. Neither pulled back immediately. Cole cleared his throat. I read about the leak. The board's meeting Monday. Sloane nodded. They want explanations. I'm not sure what to tell them. Tell them the truth, Cole said. A little girl reminded you how to feel again. Rosie tugged Sloane's sleeve. Story time? Sloane glanced at Cole. He nodded. She began, voice low. Once there was a giant who lived way up in a tower made of glass. She was very strong, but very lonely. Then one day, a tiny adventurer came looking for a friend. Rosie listened, eyes wide. When Sloane finished, with the giant riding the elevator down to play on green grass, Rosie hugged her neck. You're not lonely anymore. The photographer snapped another photo. Sloane didn't flinch this time. She stood brushing grass from her jeans. I have to go, board prep, but she lingered. Next Saturday, Cole smiled, small, real. We'll be here. As Sloane walked back to the SUV, her phone buzzed. Elena. Photo just hit page 6. CEO spotted in park with mystery family. Call me. Sloane looked back once. Cole and Rosie waved from the swings. She waved back. In the car, she opened the drawing Rosie had slipped into her pocket. 3 figures, 1 word beneath, family. Sloane pressed it to her chest, eyes stinging. Back at the playground, Cole lifted Rosie onto his shoulders. You like her, huh? Rosie nodded against his hair. She's learning to be happy. Like us, have you ever watched someone rediscover joy and realized you were part of it? That moment on the swings is pure healing. Relate to Sloane letting her guard down in public. Should she fight the media storm head-on, or protect this fragile new thing by staying quiet? If you were Cole, would you keep showing up, knowing the world is watching? Monday's board meeting would demand answers Sloane wasn't ready to give, but the real test came when Cole's eviction deadline arrived, and one phone call from the tower changed everything. Tuesday morning dawned gray and unrelenting over Queens, rain sluicing down the apartment building's fire escape in silvery sheets. Cole opened the door to take out the recycling and froze. A man in a sodden navy suit stood on the landing, manila envelope clutched in one hand, water dripping from his cheap umbrella onto the doormat. Cole Harrison. The process server's voice was flat, practiced. Cole nodded once, dread pooling cold in his gut. You've been served. The door closed with a soft click that echoed louder in Cole's mind than the thunder last night. Rosie was still asleep in her room, the faint glow of her nightlight spilling under the door. He sat at the kitchen table, yellow paint chipped from years of use, and tore the envelope open with steady hands that belied the storm inside. Custody complaint, filed by Karen Ellis, Meredith's older sister. The words blurred for a moment. Unstable living conditions, erratic childcare, exposure to media frenzy via inappropriate romantic entanglement with a high-profile individual. Karen's affidavit painted a picture of concern laced with judgment. I've watched from afar as my niece is paraded in tabloids, exploited for financial gain by a man who can't provide stability. This CEO woman, buying her way into a family, it's not right. Rosie deserves better than a spectacle. Attached, screenshots of the page 6 articles, photos of Sloane at the park with them, headlines screaming, Billionaire plays house with blue-collar dad and daughter. Cole's stomach twisted. Karen wasn't wrong about the media. It had escalated since the lobby leak, paparazzi lurking near the tower, whispers at Rosie's school. But the rest, exploitation. He slammed the papers down, breath ragged. Karen had always been the responsible one in Meredith's family, 10 years older, a suburban accountant with a neat house in Jersey, a husband who coached Little Leg. She'd helped with funeral arrangements, sent checks for Rosie's first birthday after the crash, but then distanced herself, citing differences in values. Cole knew what that meant. His blue-collar life, the night shifts, the cramped apartment. Now the media exposure had pushed her over the edge, well-meaning maybe, but laced with that superior edge she'd always had. Rosie patted out, rubbing her eyes. Daddy. Who was at the door? Cole forced a smile. Just mail, bug, pancakes for breakfast. She nodded, but her eyes flicked to the papers. Is it bad mail, like the red ones? He pulled her into a hug. Nothing we can't handle. But inside, anger burned hot, fear hotter. He called Doug, who promised a lawyer referral, then Sloane. Her voice was sharp when she answered. I'm on my way. She arrived 20 minutes later, hoodie-soaked, no makeup, looking more human than CEO. Rosie hugged her legs. Sloane knelt, held her tight. Cole handed over the papers in silence. Sloane read them, face paling. This is my fault. The photos, the exposure. No, Cole cut in, sharper than intended. It's Karen's. She's always thought I wasn't good enough for Meredith. Now she's using you as ammo. Sloane looked up, guilt etched deep. I should have been more careful. My world, it poisons everything it touches. Rosie tugged Sloane's sleeve. Are you sad? I can draw you a happy one. Sloane forced a smile. Later, sweetheart. They met with Cole's pro bono lawyer that afternoon, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Alvarez in a cramped community center office. She reviewed the filing. Weak case, but family courts err on caution. We'll gather affidavits, your supervisor, support group, preschool. Counter with your stability, paid bills, consistent care, but the media angle complicates. We'll push for mediation first. Mediation was scheduled for Thursday. In the meantime, doubts crept in. Cole snapped at Sloane over dinner that night, Rosie drawing quietly in the corner when she offered to cover legal fees. I don't need your money fixing this. It makes it look like Karen's right, you're buying us. Sloane recoiled. I'm trying to help. It feels like charity, he admitted, voice raw. Like I'm not enough on my own. She reached for his hand. You are, but we're in this together now. The tension hung until Rosie slipped a drawing between them, three figures under an umbrella. So no one gets wet alone. Cole exhaled, pulled Sloane close. Their kiss was born of crisis, slow, desperate, rain against the window like distant applause. But afterward, doubts lingered. Was this grief talking, rebound from loss? Cole lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Thursday's mediation was a battlefield in a bland conference room. Karen sat across from them, mid-50s, sensible bob, eyes red-rimmed but hard. Her lawyer flanked her. You're turning my sister's child into a circus act, Karen said, voice trembling with accusation. This woman buying rent, flashing wealth. It's not a family, it's a transaction. Sloane leaned forward. It's love, she said quietly. Real messy love, not bought. Karen's gaze softened fractionally, but she shook her head. Prove it in court, for Rosie's sake. The mediator suggested temporary supervised visitation for Karen twice a week until the hearing. Cole agreed through gritted teeth. Rosie's confusion showed that night. Her drawings turned darker, towers cracking under storms. Have you ever felt your world crack under well-meaning accusations and wondered if the fight was worth the fractures? Relate to Cole's pride clashing with need, Sloane's guilt fueling resolve. Should they settle to avoid more pain, or is pushing back the only way to protect what they've built? The supervised visits would test their fragile bonds, and when Rosie's drawings turned from sunlight to shadows, one heated argument between Cole and Sloane would threaten to unravel everything before the final hearing. The supervised visits began the following week, each one a small earthquake in their budding family. Karen arrived at the community center playroom precisely on time, Tuesday and Thursday, 4 p.m., with a bag of organic snacks and a forced smile. Rosie clung to Cole's leg the first time, whispering, "Who is she, Daddy? Why does she look like Mommy in the pictures but not feel like her?" Cole knelt, heart aching. "She's your Aunt Karen, Mommy's sister. She wants to know you better." Rosie went reluctantly, clutching Mr. Buttons like a shield. The social worker observed from a corner, notepad in hand. Karen tried coloring books, questions about school, but Rosie's answers were short, her drawings during the hour stark. Towers leaning, figures separated by jagged lines. After the first visit, Rosie came home quieter, her usual chatter subdued. She said Sloane's tower is too high, Rosie told them over dinner, that I might fall. Sloane's fork paused midair. She said that, Rosie nodded, but I told her you come down now and push swings. Cole rubbed his temples. Karen's worried bug, that's all, but the strain showed. Media escalation didn't help. Paparazzi snapped photos of Karen entering the center. Headlines blaring billionaires, found family faces custody war. Witnesses wavered. The preschool director hesitated on her affidavit, citing concern over publicity. A support group member backed out, fearing exposure. Prep sessions with Miss Alvarez grew tense. We need to show unity, she said in her office. But the class gap, Karen's hammering it. Paint Sloane as partner, not benefactor. Cole and Sloane argued that night in the kitchen, Rosie asleep in the next room. You paid the rent without asking, Cole said, voice low but edged. It looks like buying favor, like I can't provide. Sloane's eyes flashed. I did it because I care, because you were drowning. Is that rebound talking? Or do you think I'm just playing at this, rich girl slumming it? Cole winced. I don't know, sometimes I wonder if this is grief filling holes for both of us. The words hung. Sloane stepped back, arms crossed. Maybe it is, but it feels real to me. They slept apart that night, Sloane on the couch. Rosie's anxiety manifested, nightmares of falling towers, drawings of figures drifting apart on rivers. Cole held her through one, whispering assurances he half doubted. The second visit was worse. Karen brought old photos of Meredith, telling stories. Rosie came home confused. Aunt Karen said Mommy would want me with family. Real family, Sloane paced. This is emotional manipulation. Cole snapped. She's blood. What are you? The argument escalated. Sloane stormed out, driving back to her penthouse for the first time in weeks. Doubt festered. Was this too fast? Class gaps too wide? They reconciled the next day, Sloane returning with coffee and apologies. I'm scared, she admitted, of losing you both. Cole held her. Me too, but we fight together. The final hearing loomed. Prep included mock cross-exams. Karen's lawyer would grill Sloane on motives, Cole on stability. Rosie's anxiety peaked. Drawings now showed storms swallowing figures. In court, Karen testified first. I love my niece. But this media circus, this mismatched family, it's not what Meredith wanted. Cole's turn. I've raised her alone for 3 years. Sloane isn't replacing anyone. She's adding love. Sloane, I lost my daughter. I know grief. This isn't exploitation, it's healing, for all of us. Rosie's testimony. Daddy and Sloane are my heart family. Aunt Karen's nice, but she doesn't know my stories. Cross-exam was brutal. Karen's lawyer pressed Sloan on finances, charity or control, Cole on childcare, basements, really. The judge deliberated an hour, ruling custody with Cole, but concessions, monitored visits for Karen monthly, family counseling mandatory. Build bridges, the judge said. Blood and heart can coexist. Outside, relief mixed with exhaustion. Rosie hugged them both. No more bad mail, Cole laughed shakily. No more, but the strain lingered, a crack not fully mended. Have you ever fought through doubts and accusations only to emerge stronger, but scarred? Relate to the slow mending after the storm. Should they embrace the concessions as growth, or does the partial victory feel like a lingering shadow? The ruling brought relief, but the real work began in the months ahead. When class divides sparked fresh conflicts, grief resurfaced in unexpected ways, and one snowy evening would force quiet confessions that solidified there forever. The ruling's aftermath wasn't tidy victory, it was a slow, messy rebuild. Monitored visits with Karen started bi-weekly at first, in neutral parks under a social worker's eye. The first one was awkward. Karen brought Meredith's old photo album, sharing stories of sisters braiding hair on summer porches. Rosie listened politely but clung to Sloane's hand, whispering later, "Why does Aunt Karen make the story sad?" Cole and Sloane argued over it that night in the Queen's apartment. "She's trying," Cole said, defensive. Sloane crossed her arms. "By undermining us, real family comments, it's passive judgment. It's her grief too. Meredith was her sister." The class gap widened the rift. Sloane suggested a weekend at her Hamptons house, space to breathe. Cole balked. "We can't afford that lifestyle. It feels like charity again." "It's my home," Sloane countered. "Ours now if we want." The fight escalated, Cole storming out for a walk, Sloane left staring at the yellow kitchen table. Rosie overheard, her drawings that week showing figures on separate islands, bridges half-built. Therapy helped, mandatory sessions twice monthly. The counselor unpacked layers, Cole's pride as armor against feeling less than, Sloane's wealth as a barrier to vulnerability. Rosie joined some, asking about old mommies. Is it okay to love Sloane and miss Mommy Meredith? And Ava too. They visited graves together one rainy Sunday, Meredith's in Queens, Ava's in uptown Manhattan. At Meredith's, Rosie placed a crayon flower. Cole shared a story of their first date. At Ava's, Sloane traced the headstone, whispering, "She'd like you both." Grief triggered setbacks. Cole withdrew after, doubting. Sloane had a panic attack, fearing loss again. But they talked through it, nights on the couch, hands linked, building trust word by word. Family blending had hiccups. Rosie tested boundaries. Tantrums over bedtime, calling Sloane mommy, once then retracting tearfully. Aunt Karen said it might make old mommies sad. Co-parenting challenges arose, Sloane's long hours clashing with Cole's shifts. Arguments over discipline, Sloane softer, Cole firmer. They navigated with compromise, shared calendars, therapy tools like feeling charts. Rosie loved drawing. Class divides sparked fresh conflicts. At a Tower holiday party Sloane hosted modestly, Cole felt out of place amid executives, like I'm the charity case. Sloane gifted him a watch for Christmas. He returned it quietly, "Too much, makes me feel bought." They fought, made up in the kitchen, Sloane in tears. "I want to share my world." Cole, "Build one together, not pull me into yours." Rosie's adjustment showed in small ways. Nightmares fading, drawings brighter, figures bridging islands. She asked questions. Did Ava like swings? Did Mommy Meredith draw? Answers wove paths together, no erasing. One snowy December evening, they walked to Ava's favorite park, swings dusted white. Rosie ran ahead, leaving footprints. Sloane pushed her first, then Cole joined, their hands overlapping on the chains. "Higher," Rosie laughed. As she swung, Cole turned to Sloane. "I love you," he said quietly. "Not despite the gaps, the money, the worlds, because you bridge them, you show up even when it's hard." Sloane's eyes shimmered. "I love you too, for seeing me beyond the tower. For letting me build this with you, messy, real, better." They kissed, snowflakes melting on their faces, Rosie cheering from the swing. At the river's edge later, Rosie released her old drawings into the water, storms and cracks sinking, new ones kept. Families under snow, bridges strong. They stood together, Rosie between them, hands linked. "Forever adventurers," Rosie declared. Cole and Sloane echoed, "Forever." The city lights flickered on, snow blanketing everything in quiet possibility. They walked home, not to a tower or basement, but to their middle place, hearts whole in ways they hadn't imagined. Have you ever bridged worlds you thought were too far apart and found home in the middle? Relate to the quiet affirmations after the mess. If you were them, what bridge would you build next? The end, thank you for journeying through shadows, storms, fractures, and forever light. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love bridges gaps, healing earns its scars, and family is built, not born, hit that like button, comment the bridge you'd build in your life, share with someone navigating their own custody of the heart, and subscribe for more tales of vulnerability, grit, and the quiet miracles of showing up. See you in the next story.